I'm Dale Smith for Looney Politics, and there's some narratives going around right now about LNG projects in Canada. Two of them in particular, one of them is that the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz came looking to Canada for LNG and we sent him packing. And Pierre Poilievre has also put out this notion that the federal government is somehow blocking the sale of LNG to Europe. Neither of these are actually true, but they've become somewhat pervasive because we don't have a lot of understanding about what the market forces have been in this particular case. In terms of the allegation that Trudeau's blocked sales, that can't possibly be true because A, there have been no projects that have come forward, and B, there are two projects underway on the West Coast who are under construction. So that is patently false on its face. As for the question about Germany, the German Chancellor came to Canada looking for hydrogen. He knew that there was no LNG capacity for us to export, so therefore he didn't even come asking. There were a couple of media interviews where they badgered and hectored him in order to try and get him to admit that he would take Canadian LNG if it was on offer. And he said, sure, if it was on offer, but it's not. So we can't make this inference that we sent him packing for something he didn't come looking for. The reason this happens is because the economics of these projects has never actually made enough sense for the markets. On the East Coast in particular, there's no steady supply of natural gas that they could use for export. And no, they are not going to start fracking in New Brunswick in order to create that supply. There is an existing import terminal in New Brunswick, but if you convert that to an export terminal, it's still going to take 2 or 3 years to retrofit, and you still have the lack of supply issue. So you're either going to be importing it from the northeastern United States, or you're going to have to build a pipeline across Canada, and that's going to be an even bigger challenge. As well, this LNG would be a more expensive product going to Europe, and that's why it didn't make sense up to now. They couldn't find buyers in Europe for this LNG in order to go ahead and build these plants because they were already getting it cheaply from Russia. And now that Russia is becoming a problem, they are finding it as well from places like Qatar, who are also offering it more cheaply than Canada possibly could. Add to that the fact that even if they did get these projects underway in Canada and spent the years it would take to build either the facilities and or the pipelines to feed them, in order to make these facilities pay off, they need to run for at least 30 to 40 years, at which point we are going to be well into the net zero era. That means that it doesn't make any economic sense to invest in them, and the market knows this. And that's why there hasn't been a market case for LNG exports from Canada, particularly from the East Coast. And people like Olaf Scholz know this, and that's why he didn't come looking for LNG in Canada. And it would be great if the narrative could start to reflect these realities on the ground. For Looney Politics, I'm Dale Smith.